Hi, everybody, and welcome to Guesting Gusto, SCAD's virtual series of conversations and digital content with the creators and innovators remaking culture. I'm Alex Sachs, the Executive Director of SCAD FASH, where I'm here today with our lovely Azadine Alaya exhibit. And I'm so happy today to introduce Carol Martin, Gail O'Neill, Pat Cleveland, and Carmela Spinelli. Our panelists were close to Patrick and immediately recognized his talent, championed his work, and witnessed the fulfillment of his dream. Pat Cleveland is an international icon and former model of Patrick's. Carol Martin is a renowned beauty expert, and Gail O'Neill is a celebrated arts writer. Carmela Spinelli is our resident fashion historian at SCAD, and together they will discuss Patrick's life and legacy. Patrick was born in 1957 in Vicksburg, Mississippi, on this day, September 24th. In his life, he found tremendous success in Paris, where he became the first American to be admitted to the Chambre Syndicale, the prestigious governing body of the French ready-to-wear industry. Make sure to follow Pat and Gail on Instagram at Pat Cleveland and at Gail_O'Neill. And before we start today, I just want to ask everybody to turn off their video. We are live streaming on Instagram Live, so please turn off your video. Of course, be sure you're muted. And before we start, we have a poll question, and please answer, and then you'll have a chance to win a Patrick Kelly enamel pin. In just 1 minute, launch the poll. So what would you like to hear more about from the panel today? Patrick Kelly as a designer and brand, changes in the modeling industry since the 1980s, working directly with Patrick Kelly, or the legacy and influence of Patrick Kelly. And now I'll turn it over to Carmela and our panelists.
This is really fun to see all the questions that are coming through and the panel and the polling. So hi, welcome everyone. Today we're here on September 24th to celebrate the birthday of Patrick Kelly. And what I really love about the title of our exhibition at the museum at SCAD FASH, it's Derek Adams, it's inspired by Patrick Kelly's work, but it's called The Journey. And what we're gonna do today with these three fabulous women is we're gonna follow Patrick Kelly's journey from the very beginning where he met this wonderful Carol Martin in Atlanta, to the trajectory that Pat Cleveland took him on, and toward the end of his career where he really democratized fashion with the Vogue patterns, and then a retrospective and how he's influencing fashion today. Still, his journey continues and his legacy remains very strong. So what I'd like to do is show you, everyone can see this fabulous image that's on the screen right now, as taken in the late 80s. It's wonderful by an Italian photographer, Toscani. But I'm going to go to the next image, and we're going to see Carol Martin in the fabulous Patrick Kelly. And she's going to start to tell us about the first time she met Patrick and what these images mean to her. Carol, what was it like? How did you meet him? And tell us about these two fabulous images that we see on the screen right now.
So I moved here from South Georgia in '75. So I met Patrick probably '76, '77, from what I can recall. I met him through someone who owned a store, a shoe store here called Charles Jourdan. And Patrick used to do the windows for Charles Jourdan, and he also used to do the windows for Saint Laurent, which was at a mall here. Back then. So that's how I met Patrick. And Patrick, I mean, he was bigger than life. You know, he never really changed. I mean, you always saw, I never saw him out of the overalls. I mean, when I think never, ever, and Pat, I don't know if you ever saw him in anything else but the overalls. But anyway, so I met him, and Patrick was such a great self-promoter. So I was just starting out modeling here in Atlanta, and there was a group of us, and Patrick would give us clothes because, you know, back then, this is the days of disco. So I practically lived in a discotheque at night. And so we went to all the discos. We would wear Patrick's clothes. And of course, people would ask you about them and you would say, this is where I got them. And, you know, so that's kind of how, you know, he got started here in Atlanta. I mean, just putting the clothes on us. And he would have like little fashion shows here and there. And so that's, you know, when there were some clothing stores here that he would do the styling for them and for photo shoots. And that's, you know, how I got to know Patrick is we were all kind of starting out at the same time.
So I have a question. So this is disco era. Everybody's dressing up for the disco. The clothes are sleek, the shoes are high, you know, the collars are wide, and he's in overalls.
Right.
And what was your impression of that? And when did you realize this is just no ordinary person? This is a very talented man.
Well, I mean, we were both from the South. He was in a different part of the South, but we kind of connected that way because there's something about Southern people. You just kind of have this unspoken connection of the Southern madness is what I'll call it. And he was just, that's how I forgot what the question was.
About him, like your response to him wearing overalls, and there he is, and it's disco, and everybody's like dressed in a certain way, and he's wearing overalls all the time.
Well, I just think that's how people knew him, and you never forgot him. Once you met him, you never forgot Patrick. A, because of his personality, and B, you always had on the same outfit.
It seemed like part of his branding then, wasn't it? It was part of his own self-branding in that way.
Yes, it was. I mean, looking back, of course it was. I mean, for sure, yeah.
So there he is. He's working in this fantastic world of fashion in Atlanta. And then something happens. He kind of hits the wall there. He feels like he has to leave. He wants to go. He goes to New York City and he runs into this woman, Pat Cleveland. Pat?
Yeah, I'm here.
I'm going to go to the next image. Oh, that's not the right image. Hold on. There you go. Tell us about this image. Well, first of all, tell us about the first time you met Patrick and your experience with him as a person, and when you realized, this is a very interesting individual. He's wearing overalls all the time. Doesn't matter. He's hugely talented. Tell us about that.
Well, the point is that I was at home one night and this hairdresser, a friend of mine, called. He said, I want to bring over a friend to your house and he's a designer and he really likes you. His name is Patrick. I said, bring him over. Because I was just like, what am I going to do tonight? So in walks Patrick with the beard and the sweet smiley face and the overalls and the little cap. And I thought, oh, he's so relaxed and comfortable. And then I found out he was like from Mississippi and they all have such Southern charm. You know, he was just so polite and gentlemanlike, and oh, he was so gentle and just lovely, you know, you could just like eat him up. He was so cute, you know, and it was just like, oh my God, I can't believe this young man, he loves designing. And they said, well, you know, he's in his closet making these clothes in his tiny apartment that he was staying in with his friends. And he had a little space in the apartment that was like a closet and he would be in there making clothes. He said, well, would you like to go out with us some night? And so he came back the next night and he brought a little bag with him. And I was lonely in my apartment. You know how you could be in New York by yourself in your little apartment. And I didn't want to go out. And he said, come on, you're going to go out. I said, well, where are we going? He says, would you like to go singing? And I love singing. He said, yeah, I'd like to go singing. So they came over. He opened the bag and inside was like these two little hot fuchsia colored teacups for a bra and a little bathing suit bottom. And I had like these flesh colored fishneck stockings. So I put those on underneath and I had this little bikini, like the one you see in the picture, but the bra was the same color as the bikini. And he had these plastic bananas and he put them around and he stuck a feather in the top of my hat, my hair. I wear a little chignon. And he said, now what are you going to sing? And I said, I'm going to sing Il m'appelle ces petites bourgeoises, c'est ton kiki, because we both love France and we both love Josephine Baker. And I told him the story of how my godmother was from St. Louis and was Josephine Baker's Sunday school teacher and told Josephine to get on that train and get the heck out of there. And oh, then he revealed to me that he wanted to get the heck out of there too. And I said, well, where do you want to go? And he said, well, I'd love to go to Paris. And I said, well, we believed in fairies and magic and stuff. And so I was pretending I was a fairy godmother. And I said, well, your wishes come true. And so I wrote him out. I called up and got him a ticket to go to Paris. And that same night, I called secretly after I got home. And that night we went out and we went walking down 59th Street to Columbus Circle with that outfit on under a cape. And we got to the Columbus Circle where it wasn't as it is now, but there was a place where they gave shows for hairdressers. And I got up and I sang in the spotlight and I had that beautiful little Patrick Kelly outfit. And that just thrilled me. So I got home and the next day I got the ticket. And I said, can you come over? I have a surprise for you. And I thought it was just the right thing to do is get him a ticket to Paris because somebody helped me. And I thought, well, let's just pass it on because he deserves it. He's got talent. So he went over to Paris. And when I got back over there, he had his own atelier right next to the cafe floor. And that was a pretty interesting area to be in Saint-Germain because all the Americans and all the designers would go to the floor for lunch. And all you had to do was go next door and into his little atelier down the stairs. And it was really nice when you went in there because he had all of these Josephine Baker posters and little brown dollies and everything like little Aunt Jemimas and baby dolls. And he was like so famous for those little brown baby dolls. He would give them and put them on pins. So everybody in Paris was walking around with these wonderful little brown babies on their collar, like the button, you know. So I didn't get to spend much time with him because I was traveling. But when I came back, he had a whole atelier of girls from America, and they'd all be hanging out there with him, dressing up, going to the clubs, and he was becoming something in Paris. But he always had those blue jeans on. And he always was so comfortable, and he was a good cook because he made Southern fried chicken and collard greens and cornbread, and everybody came into his atelier when they were hungry and he cooked for them.
That's really part of the story too, of how he made it in Paris. I mean, it sounds when we talk about Patrick Kelly's life like it was so easy and it went from one place to the next really easily, but it wasn't. So when he got to New York, he did hit a couple of roadblocks. It just wasn't for him. Yeah, and so then you get him to Paris, and he gets to Paris and he's selling coats on the street. And I read that the reason why he was able to sell coats is because you didn't have to worry about trying on the clothes. So between selling coats and then cooking for people and actually doing catering, he was able to really get the attention. All started from your Josephine Baker, which he loved until the very, very end. So Gail, in your relationship with Patrick Kelly, there's a couple of things I want to ask you about, because by the time you met him, it was really, he had already blown up in the States. And there's a lot of pressure with designers. So everything is not all hearts and smiley and flowers and happiness. And so 2 questions, it's 2 parts. The first one is, what was your experience? And the second part is, you were on the cover of these Vogue patterns. And in so many ways, the way that our talk is called, From Atlanta to Paris and Back, the way that he really became a fashion designer by watching his grandmother making clothes at home and sewing on the buttons. And there you are representing, I would believe, a full circle. So give us your thoughts on that.
All right, my first introduction to Patrick was not a happy one, Carmela. I had been—
Yeah, it's not all hearts and flowers.
It wasn't all hearts and flowers. Sorry, there's a big truck going by. I was in Paris for my very first collections, and subsequent to Patrick's show, I discovered that my agent had booked me for Patrick's show and then rescinded the offer because another designer came along, some with more prestige or whatever it was. You just never know how these things work out. So when I found out, I felt so badly that I asked my agent for Patrick's number so I could call him personally, explain what happened, and apologize. And Patrick did not take it well. There was something almost performative about his unhinged, over-the-top reading of me. And Carol Martin can tell you she saw that side of him as well, not directed at her, but she saw it directed at other people. So you could get on Patrick's bad side very, very quickly. And he just couldn't even hear my apology. And I kind of understood that. So in hindsight, I realized that he must have been under tremendous pressure. He took a chance in booking Black models when no one else was doing that. He would have an entire show featuring Black models. So I'm sure that he felt hurt that someone whose star was rising had been booked and then withdrawn at the very last minute. It was disrespectful for my agent to have done that. So a mutual friend encouraged me to come to a party celebrating Patrick that same night. And I said, I don't know, I don't think he really wants to meet me. She said, honey, just come. And so I did go, we met, but there was never any synchronicity. I never got a chance to meet Patrick. Within a year, he had passed away. Yeah. So going to your second question about being the face of his design for many women on, being on Vogue, featured on Vogue patterns, when you're a model and you're young, Carmela, you really have no perspective on what your place is within a larger culture and within a larger, within a zeitgeist. I had no idea what it meant to be featured, first of all, representing a Black designer, representing the 1980s when fashion was over the top, loud was never loud enough, more was more. It was a completely different time. In hindsight now, I'm so glad we have this picture up of Pat on the screen. I want your students to get to your audience. Can they see that? Is that photograph still up?
Johnson.
There you are, right there.
Okay, so, all right, let's go to the picture of Pat. That's the one that interests me.
Okay.
Yes. Okay, I want your students in particular to look at the audience, to see that kind of joy, that exuberance, that engagement is very, very rare when you're walking the runway. I don't know how it became chic for designers and buyers and editors to sit very grim-faced in the audience, but you never see people smiling and showing this kind of joy. And this to me is representative of Patrick's legacy. The joie de vivre, the ability to just get people to relax and to be themselves. He talks about his grandmother's influence. The big buttons are a result of his grandmother having repaired his clothes as a little boy. For some reason, his buttons were always falling off. His grandmother couldn't afford to replace everything with matching buttons, so she just sewed whatever she had. And his buttons and bows were an homage to his grandmother's love and to her sewing. So everything that you see in Patrick, there is an integrity and a consistency there, all going back to Vicksburg, Mississippi, and his earliest influences.
So you brought up really an important topic, which two things is the joy of the runway. And I think Carol can speak to that, because when she's holding that billard stick and she's got all of these, pool balls on her, billard balls, and she's got the guitar in her hand, props. And also we're going to ask Pat about that, because now you don't see that now. So Carol, what was that like? He says, okay, you got to walk down the runway. I need you to put the pool stick in your hand. I need you to carry the guitar. Nobody else is doing that. And that had to be fun. And was it easy, or was it, oh my God, I'm not comfortable with this?
Back then, kind of shows were kind of done like that. I mean, it's not anything like it is today where you just walk out and you turn and you come back. But, they wanted you to dance and do all kind of, goofy stuff. And of course, the more over the top you were with Patrick, the happier he was. He wanted it, get out there and, play it up. And that's what everybody did when he had this huge show here in Atlanta. I mean, he wanted it to just stand out and that's what everybody in that show did that night. There was no holding back. Just do it. Just do it and be wild. I mean, that's who Patrick was, and that's what he wanted everybody to have fun. And as you can see in the videos, everybody's having a great time in that show. And I think Pat would probably agree that it was always about being fun with Patrick.
Yes, and I'm going to talk to Pat about that, because Pat is representative of that whole having fun on the runway, famous for it, made it famous, the butterfly of Pat. Let's go back a couple of years now, because it's really important when we start to talk about the history and we want to talk about the Black models. So I'm going to find my way into that trajectory. Is Versailles 73. Pat, you were there. You paved the way for Black models. And it took a long time in between. So tell us about your experience with Versailles and France, And the acceptance of that in Paris, how the Americans blew everybody away. And then we're going to go to this topic of the Black models, because it's an interesting part of our poll.
Okay. You know,
Yes.
America has always been the land of the free, the home of the brave, and crazy music. And music was so important to the designers at the time that they would design whole collections so that you can move to the music, because everybody was dancing and feeling young and free, real butterflies, let loose on the world. And then we just sent our energy over there because we knew, you know, somehow they had to loosen up those royal strings and get out in the street and dance with the music. And so basically we were bringing the streets to the palace. You know, we were saying, this is the dance. This is the way people feel. You know, we're not going to have anything rigid. We're not going to be, oh, ta-ti-ta, nose in the air. We're going to move with the rhythm of life. And we went in there with our model, our 7th Avenue models, who hardly ever get noticed. And it was a bunch that were like 10 Black girls, and the rest, everybody, colorful bouquet of girls. You know, there was no color that wasn't beautiful enough for the Americans. We had one in each color. So that palette was right, the art palette, you know. So we went in there and we marched around to the simplest of lighting and the most beautiful forms of creation, the simplest cuts of clothes, the most modern American independent woman, Anne Klein. We had Halston when cut in the bias with Stephen Burrows with all the colors, and Oscar de la Renta. And oh my God, we had some beautiful things happening with the clothes. So we felt very proud of ourselves and proud to be American, marching over there. And here we go. Let's kill them with our show. And we did, because it went quickly. It had vibrance because people were happy to be in the palace. Oh my God, who gets to go to the palace and walk in the hall of mirrors with the cherubs and the candles going, and walk with tall Givenchy and be with Cardin and Yves Saint Laurent and all that special jewelry they had. I know you know what I'm talking about. Tiaras and crowns and all those jewels from India. Oh, every princess was there, and the Duchess of Windsor. I was sitting next to her. Everybody sitting on each other's laps, and all these powdered wigs on the servants with gloves and tights, and beautiful boys. Anyway, it was something to behold. Golden, 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 gilded everywhere. Golden chairs, golden ceiling.
And the American simplicity really just bowled over the French. They really did. It's interesting that
stroke. Yeah,
they killed them. The Americans crushed it. And it's that year that Pierre Berger, who was the business partner and the business genius behind Yves Saint Laurent, that he decided in 1973 that he was going to start the pret-a-porter, the ready-to-wear component of the very historic and famous Chambre syndicale de la couture parisienne, of which then Patrick Kelly was the only Black American to be invited to this pret-a-porter. So I want to get from you, Gail, if you can, retrospectively think about the significance of that and talk to us. And also, Carol, your thoughts, and then Pat. So Gail, from a journalistic point of view now, how do you see the significance of that?
I have mixed feelings about it, Carmela. On the one hand, I wonder, Patrick is kind of an enigma to me. On the one hand, we have this man who plays up his Southern roots, a very folksy, in a way that confirms Northern and maybe European ideas of Southerners as being simple, as being down home, as having a complete lack of sophistication. But this is a man who was keenly aware of branding and of fashion and how to make a statement. He's also a man who his lawyer in Paris said, "I never had a client, especially in fashion, who was more keen on dotting every I, crossing every T, and reading every line of a legal document." So this man was no little country bumpkin, but that's what he portrayed. So a part of me has to wonder now, given the context of the 21st century, how eager would Parisians have been to have embraced an African-American man who came in with elegance, who came in speaking the same language they did, who wasn't frying chicken in the background, who wasn't so homegrown. So I really do not know. I don't know if Patrick's, if he was wearing a mask, if he was performing some kind of drag. As Carol said, he was a master at branding and at self-promotion, and obviously it worked for him, or if it was really him And this sincerity is what got him through the door. I just don't know. It's a mystery. It's an enigma. And I think Carol and Pat can speak to the man. Like, did you ever see him not over the top and flamboyant, but just quiet, contemplative, businesslike? Because obviously he was.
Yes.
Oh, would you like me to speak about Patrick?
Sure.
I'll tell you, there's a natural intelligence that's in his DNA. You know, because of all the suffering of growing up in a prejudiced America, it was up to him to be his very best. And you know, it's not easy being in America and being Black. And so when I gave him that ticket, that was my interjection into society for him, saying, this is a Black man who has intelligence, talent, and he deserves to have a life of freedom without harassment. And going to Paris was just very important because they were open-minded, open-hearted, and they knew how to appreciate talent regardless of what color you are. I do not think that they saw him as a Black man. I think they saw him as an extremely talented, intelligent, and open-hearted, giving, natural person. And that's who he was. He was naturally endowed with this gift of being able to make people feel and look beautiful. And that's why I gave him the ticket, because he knows that is his life, it's his right to be free. You need freedom. And this country is suffering now. And he suffered. Believe me, he suffered. But it was not that he did things outside of who he truly was. No, he was not plotting and planning. He was actually a real human being who gave 100%. And every time that we did a show or anything we do, he would say a prayer before the show. He would hold hands with all the girls and say, let's not forget who we truly are. Who are we? Our soul is in this. And that's why he is considered, for me, a man with complete, honest soul. Yeah, business is out there, but that's just the outer petals. And if you have an intelligence, you don't have to pretend to be something you're not. He was from the Mississippi. He wore his jeans proudly. Yeah, farmers working, you know, slavery, all of that stuff has to be recognized. People built countries out of slaves, and he built his whole career out of that knowledge of where he came from. And I think every history has to be known, you know, especially now and this time when he's being honored. Yes, he had to suffer. And yes, he was intelligent. Never hide your intelligence.
Carmela, can I speak to that?
Sure.
Because in 1987, Ben Brantley, in writing about Patrick for Vanity Fair magazine, and it was a glowing piece, Ben says retailers often called him, meaning Patrick, untouched, childlike. The woman who was the owner of the Martha boutiques recalled that when Kelly showed there, her customers accepted him the way they would some marvelous Disney character. Patrick himself was quoted as saying, when people said, you know, Patrick, we have a problem with these Aunt Jemima type dolls and stereotypes that you're holding up. He said, white people don't have a problem with Mickey Mouse, so why should Black people have a problem with Aunt Jemima? Maybe in the 1980s, we were not as concerned with the exterior gaze as we are now, but these things, looking back in context, are extremely problematic. And again, Patrick was so intelligent, I just wondered if he was playing a game, understanding how to work that chessboard, or if he was a victim of a larger culture.
No.
I think Carol, I'd like to have Carol's comment on this, because I don't see Patrick Kelly as a victim at all.
No.
And I think, Carol, you were there in the very beginning when he was handing out those little pickaninny dolls for pins and getting them. So, and you're from the South, and you're a white woman from the South. So can you speak to some of this?
Yeah, well, in Atlanta, he didn't have the dolls here. That wasn't going on then. I saw all of that when I was in Paris, and like I've described him before, he was like the Pied Piper is how I looked at him. People would see him and they would flock to him. And here I go back, great self-promoter. You never forgot him. And I will say that back in the 70s, because here I am, a white girl hanging out with a Black guy in overalls and when running all over town, I never saw any prejudice. I mean, everybody just loved him. And even if somebody was gonna maybe be rude to him, I mean, he would either laugh it off, or he would just wouldn't go into it with anyone. But I realized Patrick was really smart. I mean, I could see that. I mean, not that he ever played dumb, because he never did, but he was just always goofy. And, as everybody's describing him, he was just a happy, fun guy, but he was a smart guy. I mean, I can remember when he asked me to come over to Paris, and I was like, oh, I don't speak French. I'm scared. I don't know. He goes, I don't speak any French either. Well, I get over there and I walk in his showroom. He is just speaking French like it's his first language. And Patrick. But Pat, I think you can probably agree with this, that you never knew when Patrick was goofing on you, being funny, or if he was telling, I don't want to say he was lying, but telling the truth, because there was always just like kind of this little play game with things. Like sometimes he would tell me things and I knew he was goofing, and sometimes he'd tell me things and I go, no, I think he's telling me the truth. So it was always just kind of funny with him. It was always kind of fun and games is the way I look back at when I think of him.
Carol, you started collecting his work, and it's a really important part of the exhibition. And so when what were you thinking? Okay, I got to start collecting this because he's my friend, or I think this is going to be valuable someday, or I really love these buttons because on First Dibs, one day they're going to be like $700 of 2 buttons. Tell us about that. I'm interested in the whole idea of collecting. Yeah.
Well, when I think back, the reason I kept it is because I just love Patrick. And I think back some of the things I gave away way back, like in the 80s, to some of my girlfriends that they had parties, and then, things just disappear or whatever. But I just kept them. And I'm not really so much of a hoarder, but it was just a memory of him. This is before he was even gone, that I kept a lot of these things. Because, we'd have a photo shoot or a testing we were doing, and he'd want to be a part of it. He would want you to look good. Here again, self-promoting. So, but then when, I was over in France and I left and he gave me all these clothes. I mean, the story of him taking me in this warehouse and just saying, take whatever you want. And I couldn't pick anything because I was overwhelmed. And he's just pulling things off the rack and just throwing them on the floor. Take this, take this, take this.
So
and
fun.
he was so giving. He was so giving, and he wasn't looking for anything in exchange. That he was never that person. He didn't say, if I do this for you, you owe me. And he wasn't that person. So, I wore the clothes for years and years and years, and then I got too old because they were too young looking for me, or I didn't fit into them anymore, and, just kept them. And, a lot of them, I had on First Dibs. I couldn't do anything with them anymore. I couldn't wear them. I kept them in a box forever. For years and years and years and years and years. And I'll have things that I'll never get rid of because I had so many of them, but luckily, it's just.
Happy time. A happy time. Yeah, happy time.
Carmela, speak to the, an alignment that I saw between Patrick, his personality and, this playful jocular guy, and then the really sharp businessman, super intelligent, and the super playful clothes, and the restraint that he was capable of. Carol has a beautiful coat. It's a very military style, extremely tailored through the bodice, beautiful big buttons going down the front, but the buttons are the same color as the wool coat. And then this exquisite circle skirt. It is the epitome of restraint and sophistication. And you would never guess that the same person who put giant bows and buttons, colorful, neon colored things on dresses, was the same person who designed this coat. So there was a dichotomy to Patrick in life and in the atelier.
Well, when you think about the patterns, Vogue patterns that you can make Patrick Kelly at home, and then also he did have a couture. They did support him in that way. His clothes, I remember working at Saks Fifth Avenue in those years, and I would walk past Patrick Kelly and just say, oh my God, I gotta have one. And I finally had one, and I didn't keep it the way Carol did, so that's another topic. But there was this, I want to say high and low part of what he did, and that was really important. I think it's really important in retrospect to look at that as well. So I have to say that Maya Angelou, which is part of this, was going to write a book about Patrick Kelly, and she was going to call it The Journey. And she said about the Gollywogs and all of the way that he subverted those Black icons or the images, that she said her comment is, it's no matter how you wrap poison, if you put it in a crystal, and I'm paraphrasing her, it's still poison. But what I want to talk about now, because we're going to get to the point where we're going to have some students ask questions, and we want to think about now what's called the Kelly Initiative. This is a way that Patrick Kelly's legacy has been able to sustain and I think revitalize young Black designers. And I want you all to just give comments on the legacy and how Patrick Kelly continues in his impact today. Pat, I'd love for you to answer that, to start off that.
Well, during these times, it's very important that people realize, you know, it's not the color of your skin, it's the color of your intention. You know, your intention should take you to where you need to go. And all these difficulties that you might have in one place may not exist somewhere else. So you have to go where you need to go in the future. You know, always keep your eye on your talent and your intention of what you want to do with it. Develop yourself, have a life, you know, spend your time in a place where you will be loved and be held with great dignity and appreciation. It's very important to be appreciated. Don't waste your time being somewhere where they tell you no, because it's about yes and abundance. And there's always going to be one person.
That's
who
beautiful,
that
Pat.
ticket.
That's beautiful.
That's what I want to say. And I wanted to say about buttons and bows. Patrick and I used to sing this song all the time. Buttons and bows, let's go away. They keep on wearing those frills and flowers and buttons and bows. Frills and flowers and buttons and bows. We used to sing.
Adorable.
We used to sing that to each other all the time.
So, Gail, what is your feelings about his legacy and the Kelly Initiative? I love that they've named the Kelly Initiative after Patrick Kelly. He had a very short, really, when he just started to really escalate, he was snuffed out by AIDS, which was a terrible, terrible thing. So now he's really revitalized in the world of fashion and beyond. So what is your feelings about this legacy?
Patrick reminds me of so many chefs I've met and interviewed over the years who say the same thing, that they came into their own when they went back to basics, when they remembered their grandmother's cooking, they remembered the love, they remembered what hospitality was. So Patrick's legacy is that he maintained the DNA that he came into the world with. That was his legacy, and that's what he shared. What you saw was what you got. Also, Patrick was a hard worker, working not just for acclaim, even though that was his goal, but he was working, whether it was dressing Carol in the 1970s and all of her girlfriends, because he just loved women. And he left that DNA in his dresses. You couldn't wear one of his outfits without feeling cherished, without feeling super feminine, and without feeling loved and embraced. So I would say that hard work, holding on to where he came from, and then being ready to accept opportunities when and where they arose. He didn't shy away from opportunities. So when a fairy godmother like Pat comes up and says, here's a ticket, you're leaving for Paris tomorrow night, he left that same night. He didn't say, oh, well, I can't, well, I should, well, he just took the chance, and he took a chance on himself, and he moved forward through life that way. So those are all of it. That's what I think of when I think of Patrick.
Great, it's a risk, taking the risk. Carol,
Right.
what do you think? What's your thoughts on that legacy of today,
Well,
for today?
Well, I always say with Patrick is the legacy is to don't be afraid to think out of the box. And that's what Patrick did. In his day and time, he was way out of the box, and he wasn't afraid. He didn't care. He didn't care what anybody said. You can't do this. You can do it. And if you listen to people that say you can't, oh, that goes for all of us, you know, at some point people are going to say no, or no, it's not going to work, or you're crazy, or whatever. Stick with it, you know, And that's what he did. I mean, he never gave up. So to me, Patrick's legacy is to think out of the box and don't give up. Keep moving forward.
So you have a lot of fashion design students, you have a lot of fashion luxury marketing majors, you have a lot of fashion industry, young people that are going to embark on this new career of theirs. What advice do you have for them with Patrick Kelly in your heart and using Patrick Kelly's trajectory and career trajectories as an example?
You're asking me?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. No, you were asking. I'm sorry. My advice to them is you are going to run up against challenges. I mean, that's just life. But in the fashion industry, especially today, you've got to be different. You've got, and here I just have to keep going back to, don't be afraid to be different. It's okay. And not everybody's going to get it. Not everybody's going to get it. But those who do, there's no explaining. I mean, they get it, and those who don't, they never will understand. So don't be afraid. This is my biggest advice. But it's okay to be afraid, but just move through it.
Gail, what do you think? That's great advice, Carol. Thank you so much. Gail.
I think Carol put it beautifully. And I think the only thing that young people have to do to be different is to be themselves. There is only one of you in the universe, and there will only be one of you. Go with that. Trust in that. Understand that you have something to say, something to contribute, and forget this march to sameness that social media and popular culture is promulgating. It is BS, and it gets you nowhere. You don't want to be one of the herd. You want to be the little antelope that's out here just doing his or her own thing. That's what's going to attract attention and respect, ultimately.
Thank you. Pat?
Oh,
You're
hi, still here.
You're giving advice to the next generation of
for designers?
Patrick
Well, you
Kelly
know, I
fans.
started out as a designer, and I went to design school and everything, and I made clothes for Henry Bendel's when I was 15. And so I really know what it is to sew and make clothes, but make clothes for your friends, dress your friends, be generous. Get those clothes out there. Let people see that they're useful. What is the trend today? What do you need? Pajamas, underwear, something to stay home in? Make that and put it online. We didn't have online, you know.
Love that.
Make some Netflix clothes or something. I don't know. Watch TV. And, you know, Antonio and the whole gang, everybody's had that sleeping bag coat. So, I mean, make that if you have to, but get cracking with where
That's
you
really
are
fun.
in the moment. Make something useful and then put it out there. Get it going and follow through. Don't give up the ship. Follow your thread. Put that needle in there and keep sewing or drawing or whatever you can do to make yourself feel happy every day. Hello?
That's wonderful. I love that advice. Alex, if you're there, I'd love for you to just talk about the exhibition and how everybody should be flocking to SCAD FASH to see it, and the Derek Adams, which is a beautiful exhibition.
Thank you. Well, I just wanted to also say for anybody who's on today, if you have a question for our panelists, please put it in the chat. We'll give a few minutes. Thank you for your comments. If you have some questions, we'll be happy to pose them. So I'm really pleased to say SCAD FASH is reopened. We open on September 10th. We're open Thursday, Friday, and Saturday from 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. And we're doing all of the CDC social distancing and safety protocols. So we have time tickets. You can go to scadfash.org. I have you can hear some young guests here right now next to me. So as I said before, we have two exhibitions. We have the Azzedine Elia and Gilbert Adrian show, which you can see behind me. And then, of course, the impetus for our panel today is the brilliant exhibition by Derek Adams called Patrick Kelly, The Journey, which features a series of work that he created several years ago in conjunction with the Studio Museum in Harlem. They are multimedia, beautiful, joyful collages based on the archive that Derek had done extensive research at the Schomburg Center, which is part of the New York Public Library in Harlem. And by the very generous loan by Carol Martin, who loaned us many of the things that she talked about today that she had collected through the years with Patrick Kelly. So we have, magazines and announcement cards, some of the pins that we talked about today, and original clothing by Patrick Kelly. And Derek Adams was very open to expanding the exhibition so they would include these works by Patrick Kelly so that you could really see within Carol's archive the things that Derek saw at the Schomburg and he was responding to in creating the exhibition, Patrick Kelly, The Journey. So our show is up through January 3rd. You can go again to scadfash.org and you can read more about it. But we invite you also to come and take a look, again, Thursday through Saturday. If anybody has any questions, I'm going to put my
yeah, we have some questions here right now.
And I was just going to say, I'll put my email in the chat in case any of the students have direct questions for me. You can just reach out to me directly and I'm happy to answer.
Okay, so we're going to start with this question from Julie Johnson Olson. And the question is, do you think Patrick thought he could influence society? Hold on a second, that's not Julie Johnson. Let me go up a little bit here. That is from Tatiana Leach. Do you think Patrick thought he could influence society for people of color, LGBT, and women through fashion and modeling?
Hello, that's the truth. Hello, it's Pat here.
Yes.
Yeah.
We can hear you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, come on, let's get real. What is your sensation of who you truly are? And what are you trying to let people know about love? People are full of love and they do not want to be treated badly. And Kelly had all of these things going on, being a gay man and having, all of these situations around. And in the world of art, we don't look at that as something. We just look at that as an attribute of, yeah, you got it going, like everybody is one person. So we don't separate in the art world. That's the wonderful thing about the art world. They don't look at you for anything except for your participation in enlivening the spirit of humanity. And what he did and what he set, being the color brown, was beautiful, because he brought that palette out and he made people pay attention. Yeah, dip your brush in this and see how you can accent the world, and that's kind of his legacy. He painted boldly. He made the strokes that make people wonder, what is this miraculous, delicious flavor and sensation? Chocolate, yummy. I think I'll have some.
So you have the exuberance of Pat Cleveland is just fantastic, and all of our panel. I have another question from Julie Johnson Olson. Here we go. Did Patrick Kelly know and work with Antonio Lopez?
Oh my gosh, I know that.
Pat Cleveland, you did, but did he?
Oh yeah, they were friends. Like sometimes Antonio would have a gang shooting at the house, like invite everybody over. So there would be
so
Patrick
crazy.
And some models and some Antonio girls, and we'd all like pile on each other like a pile of people, climbing up steps and peeking into the camera and outdoing each other with poses and hugging each other. One of those group shots that we can't do right now, but it's in our spirit. So it was just a lot of spirited people. Antonio Lopez and Patrick Kelly, what a great combination. It was like champagne. It was better than that. It was like balloons and bubbles.
Balloons and bubbles with champagne. I have a really interesting question. In regard to accessing research or discovering new creatives, I have always had trouble finding information on Southern designers such as Patrick Kelly. Are there any resources you have in mind? And this is from Lauren.
I suggest SCAD FASH, the Philadelphia Museum of Art, the Schomburg Center in New York City, and there's one other major cultural institution that holds his collections. Oh, it's Jackson
The
State.
Schomburg Center. Oh, the Jackson, yes, Jackson State. Mm-hmm.
Right, his alma mater. So those are 4 great places to start.
And also, I would suggest you look at the Kelly Initiative, Lauren. It's you're going to see a lot of really interesting designers pop up on that, and it's ongoing and it's current. So you should just take a look at that. Yes, Christina's telling us the Brooklyn Museum had a show. There's been several Patrick Kelly shows, even from his own Jackson University had a show. So you can Google Patrick Kelly and dig deep. There's many articles, and that will link you to other Southern designers as well.
Yes, Robin Givon, the Washington Post has written about him beautifully. The Christian Science Monitor has done wonderful profiles.
Beautiful, yes. Vice magazine did one. Robin Givon of the Washington Post did one. There's a lot. Vanity Fair did a spread on Patrick Kelly really toward the end of his career when Warnaco took over and really catapulted him into the world name that he is now. Okay, so question from Instagram, and maybe Carol can speak to that because she was there in the beginning, and also Pat. What was Patrick's design process? Carol, that's a good question for you because you were there in the very beginning.
The design process was wild. I mean, so he had this little apartment in Atlanta, and you'd walk in there, and Pat, maybe you saw the same thing when you were around, just bolts of fabric and stuff thrown all over the place and just wild. And you'd come in and he would say, here, hold this, and you'd hold it, and he would tie it around you, and I mean, it would just turn into something. And he would look at it, and then he'd say, hand it to me, and he would zip, sew up the sides and throw some ribbons around it, and come back in a couple of hours, and there's your outfit. I mean, it was just amazing. I mean, his mind never stopped. He probably never slept. I mean, when I think back, his mind probably could never shut his mind off because he was just 150 miles an hour all the time. And it was just wow when I think back on it. I mean, I keep going back to, I didn't think anything of it at the time, but looking back, I realized how amazing he really was, in the beginning, how creative he was.
Yeah, and it's really interesting because then, of course, he was able to be more formal with the funding that he got and the support that he got from Pierre Berger and Sonia Rykiel also. And then when they were doing patterns, and so think about that kind of wild draping and then going to this formal where you open up a pattern and there it is in a package already done, and there's your Patrick Kelly dress. I think it's such a great trajectory and circle again. I've said that before. Okay, so I have a question from Lauren Porter, and this is for everyone. With the rise of the Black Lives Matter movement, do you think that there will be more inclusion in the fashion industry to include more Black designers? And I'm going to send you, Lauren, back to the Kelly Initiative because they have challenged the CFDA with this, and I will not tell you more, but what do you think about that? With the rise of Black Lives Matter movement, do you think that there will be more inclusion in the fashion industry to include more Black designers?
Well, you got to tune into Beth Ann Hardison if you want to know anything about that. She's the one who pushes that more than anybody, and I think it's really important you tune in, understand, and go forward with whatever it is you want to state about that, because it's very touchy and very important that we expand people's lives and allow them to be creative,
Why is it touchy, Pat?
Because everybody's on this side or the other side and no one knows, and everyone's being talked down to, and there's so much pain and heartbreak and people are so afraid. So the only brave thing we can do is be creative and participate in the movement where everyone is allowed to be who they are supposed to be. We're here to grow and to nourish ourselves and each other in all aspects of things, but not hatred. And Patrick was standing for love and beauty and joy and a creative mess he was good at making. So just take the mess and make it a beautiful creative mess by tuning into the Black Lives Matter movement. Make sure that people know that they have a chance to, be beautiful in the way that humanity is supposed to be. That they can find a place to be creative. And, in fashion and art, we all support each other in the fact that, there's some place for you somewhere, sometime, and get in there and expand. You have to be like Hercules. You have to push the negativity away and shine. These things that we need to attach ourselves to are just basically shiny light. We need to brilliance the world, you know, and not think the little black dress. Kelly made that little black dress, but we don't want to use it for mourning. We want to use it as an inclusive tonality. You know, an artist, you have to, you know, you have the tones and the tints and the things. So we're tinting and toning and making a dimension that's good for all of us to be encapsulated in. You know, it's just an all-encompassing embracing. You know, with the Patrick Kelly initiative and the journey, you know, we can take notice of things that are important to keep our eyes open and to be human beings that understand that we are given the right to be creative, you know.
I think the greatest strength of the Black Lives Movement has been that it has created a disruption and created tremendous discomfort, where people in power used to look around and not see that, hey, everybody in the room is white or it's all male. They're now looking around and thinking about who is missing. And once you have raised people's consciousness in that way, and they understand that it is financially prudent, not only the sociologically responsible thing to do, but once they understand that there is finance and penalties for not being more inclusive, that's when change takes place. So I think in that sense, the Black Lives Movement, it has pushed us in the right direction. Will it last? I don't know. I can only hope so.
I have to agree with Gail 100%.
From your perspective, Carol, how does that feel for you that you were there, part of that inclusion and all of that in the beginning?
Well, I just think, you know, Patrick, you know, made it in a time where most Blacks just didn't. I mean, think of what he did and how he got there. And it's because he was talented. And I just kind of have to look at, I mean, it's a very competitive market. It's a tough market. If somebody tells you it's not, they're lying, because it is. It's very hard. It's like modeling and music, and if you're good at what you do, and even sometimes if you are, you don't always make it to the top. But you know, I just think whether you're Black or white, if you're good at what you do, then stick with it, and hopefully you'll be successful. There's no guarantees, but you got to be good at what you do.
So I have the last question. It's a really interesting one from Tommy Drennan, and it just speaks to the larger picture of where we are in our world. In these times of COVID-19, when fashion sales are incredibly low, what do you think the fashion industry needs now? And I think the students are really interested in knowing your thoughts with all of your fashion experience, whether on the runway or not, but you've lived it. So how do you answer that question?
I would say the fashion industry needs to reflect the audience that they serve. So they need to, as Patrick said, I love all women, big women, skinny women. He had an 8-month pregnant woman walking on his runway. It's time for fashion to recognize that all women are not a size 2, all women are not tall, all women are not 22 years old. And if you can address your audience, you're doing a public service, and also it's good for your bottom line. Just acknowledge the reality of who and what we are as human beings.
I think that when the COVID is over, because at some point it will have to go away, I think it is going to be an explosion of fashion to celebrate what we've just been through. That's what I keep thinking is going to happen and hope happens, because I'm ready to go shopping and get something new to wear somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think you have to create a lifestyle for yourself where you see what actually that it is that you put on your body, and you have to be aware of, you know, maybe you don't want to kill animals for it, or do things where people have to dig too deep in a cave and die, or, you know, you have to think of the energy that goes into the things that you're making. How can you make it simple and easy and not harmful? You know, I'm a vegan, and I believe that you should, you know, do kindness in fashion. Think of that. Think of your soul and what you're doing to the earth, and try to do those kind of fashions. You know, I think people want to take care of, be with nature and not harm it. So think about along those lines. Get on that path And I think you'll feel good in yourself. And when you have that goodness in what you're creating, you know, that's this time now. That's, we're trying to stay alive, stay safe, you know, make your mask with a button on it. I don't know, but I'm just saying, you know, do what we need to do now, and let people know that you're aware of, and you're conscious of what is the path where we as human beings need to go with fashion. Not just like, oh, how many numbers and 10 of that and 1,000, 200 million of that. It's not about that. It's about the quality of your lifestyle and what you put into that, under that sewing machine, and how you have your workers work, or how you work yourself. You know, like, to be creative means listening to the higher path in what you create. And so that's what the industry needs now, because you know, that's where we're going.
This is a really wonderful panel. We have time for one more, and this person, Sierra, has asked a question twice, so I'm going to ask you this. How do you ladies specifically demonstrate practices of making people of color feel equal in the workplace?
Jeez.
How do we
Yeah, that's a tough question, Sierra Couch.
Repeat the question, please, Carmela.
How do you ladies specifically demonstrate practices of making people of color feel equal in the workplace?
Wow.
I write about the arts, and I'm sitting at my kitchen table alone, so I'm not in charge of a staff. But it's very important to me when I do write about people to not flatten them to just their sex, their sexuality, or their color. I like writing about human beings in their totality. And I think that's the most respectful thing that I can do as a writer. And I practice that daily.
Wonderful.
Well, I used to own a model agency for like 25 years in Italy, and I have been very inclusive and everybody is a star. When they hit my agency, they are all shiny, and everybody goes out and does their thing. And when girls call me, I say, just hold on for a minute, see if you can survive, stay safe. And if you have the opportunity, if anyone, just pick around and find out where you can serve a purpose for someone. You know, these days people are sending things to models who are in the business. Like, I have this nice Tiffany bracelet they sent me. Oh, thank you. And you know, you can still work from home. I mean, if it's a talent. You have to develop your talent. For models, you have to know how to do your hair, your makeup, stay healthy, be interested in art, serve a purpose, bring clothes to life, you know. And so if you can connect up to some young designers that are around you and they want to put clothes on a model, you can have them send them to your house, and you can put them on and make them look good as you can, so that they can see clothes need people in them, not just flat on a page. What's the purpose of clothing? Is to cover your body in a certain style and a certain rhythm. So, I mean, for models, people who want to model, just, you know, realize it's the beauty business. It's taking care of yourself. It's dressing with dignity and style. So in the business, you know, right now it's very touchy, but don't lose faith. If you believe in something, you can make it happen.
That's really beautiful. So Carol, from Atlanta to Paris and back, we're back in Atlanta. Give us your parting words on the exhibition and why everybody should be running to SCAD FASH or going online to seeing the work.
Well, just to see what Derek's done is just amazing, and just bringing Patrick's legend and everything to life is the way I look at it. And to see, you know, the things that, you know, fortunately I've been able to, you know, loan you guys, that you can see from the little dress he cut out and threw little bows on the back of, that he just literally made that thing out of a tube. And then later on, years and years later, you see he turned it into one of his, you know, designs. And just, there's so many great things to see of everything that Patrick incorporated in his work. I mean, everything from, just the creativity is just amazing. And Derek shows that too. So I would say you've got to get there and see it. I mean, you just don't want to miss it for sure.
Well, I think we're ending, and I'm leaving you all with this image of Patrick Kelly, which is the way he started his fashion shows was by spray painting this heart. And I love the heart buttons. And so with the love of Patrick Kelly carrying us through, I just love this last comment that I'm going to leave this from Elizabeth Wiggs Cooper. I really appreciate the different points of view from the panelists and their generosity to share with us. Thank you so much. And I want to thank you so much, ladies, for just such a wonderful way to celebrate Patrick Kelly's birthday. We really should have had a heart-shaped cupcake with a candle in it, but we could all do that at home. We'll go get some cupcakes, but thank you all.
Okay.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Happy
It's so
birthday.
great to see you. Happy birthday, Patrick.
Birthday, Patrick.
Everyone's just saying thank you, thank you. I love the comments, so we could stay on for the comments. It'd be the wonderful comments. It's there. Thank you, thank you, thank you. It's really great. These things are really important for the young people to hear your voices, and to continue to come back to Guest with Gusto, because we have really wonderful speakers, and it's a wonderful series, and it's a great way for connectivity in the world of art and design. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Have a good day. Stay
You
safe.
too. Nice meeting you, Pat.
You too. Keep it joyful, gang. We're looking for those new designers to dress us up.
Exactly. Bye.
Bye-bye.